So what I did is I really thought about this, and I wanted to actually map out on. So just look on the left side of the slide where you see product market fit, right? And we'll do this for each of the 4 factors. On the x-axis, I mapped out the quality of the factor, right? So we're going from low to high, right? Meaning that obviously low means, for example, a store with low product market fit, and high means a store with a great product, essentially, right? And how does this correlate? How does this change, this evolution, right? If you just imagine mapping out the whole distribution of all Shopify stores out there with the average revenue of the store, right? So actually take your time and try to think about this yourself, because I think it's a really valuable exercise to do in your mind, because it will actually force you to think, where should I focus on? And then, we can kind of discuss from my experience, and then you can also think about your experience if you agree or disagree, and also very interested to hear your comments below. But as you might guess, right, and I'm going to show you in a second my opinion on how the correlation of those factors is that obviously if you have a low product market fit, you'll have low revenue, right? And if you have a high product market fit, you'll have a much higher revenue. I think that's pretty obvious. But is it a linear relationship or not? What I think is that it is not a linear relationship. I think it's an exponential relationship. And I think it's pretty obvious if you look at the distribution of the stores, right? If you have a successful product market fit, right, you're making exponentially more than the store that has a somewhat worse product market fit, right? It isn't a bit more. I think there is this inflection point at some point, right, where the quality of the product really makes a huge difference. And I actually, my animations are a bit off. I divided it into, let's actually go back because I didn't want to show you the next factor just yet. But there's different tiers, right? So I just divided into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And again, this is just my take on this, right? And you obviously, I think the point here, right, is when you choose a product for your Shopify store, I think this is the most important decision you're going to make, because if you're now in tier 1, right, or tier 3, it's going to really essentially determine the results that you're going to get from the Shopify store, right? Because if you're selling a shitty product, right, no matter how good your creatives are, your targeting is, your product pages, I don't think you're going to be making a lot of revenue, right? And believe it or not, if you have a great product and you found this gap in the market and it's not saturated and there is demand for it, then you can actually have mediocre creatives, mediocre targeting, and a mediocre product page, and you're going to do great. And I see this over and over again, right? And I think those graphs, right, we're kind of doing a ceteris paribus thing, right? Which means we're trying to keep all the other factors constant, right? So how does the revenue correlate to the product market fit if we keep the creative quality, the targeting quality, and the product page quality the same, right? And my point is that it's an exponential relationship. So you should really try and focus on getting a high quality product versus a low quality product. So as I already mentioned, I think the most important factor is the product market fit. So let's say, and this applies to 2 different kind of instances, right? Let's say you already have a Shopify store in a certain niche, like for example, the store I showed you, and you're thinking, okay, which new product do I add to this niche, right? And this really links well with my other video where I talked about actually how you go through the entire process of sourcing new products. Like I literally have this massive Excel where I go through all the different criteria I look at, literally, almost like 50 different criteria I look at when evaluating a new product, right? And all the way to actually running those tests with my timeline on Asana, where I literally tick off a massive checklist to just run those tests, and then I run many simultaneous tests, right? And what I see is that when I run a test with a new product, right, either again for an existing store or for a new store, when I'm starting completely from scratch, the product lands roughly, right? And again, there's different, this is just my take on how to divide the line, right? Obviously, there's no like right answer here. You can divide in different tiers, but I think the point is the product ends up being in one of those 4 tiers, right? Either you run a test with a new product and it has a 0 ROAS, and you actually have great creatives. Let's say you have great targeting, you have a great product page, and it still gives you 0 ROAS, right? And what that means is that you just have no product market fit. The product you chose is just a shitty product, right? And you need to try again. And that's why, again, in my product sourcing video, I talk about testing batches. You test 20 products at a time to then map out the distribution across the different products. Right? Because if you test 2 or 3, you might just be unlucky and you're just landing in tier 4 or 3, and you think, And that's the thing. In the beginning, it's so tricky, right? Because I mean, like everyone has made this mistake. You might test a product. You might even test 2, 3, 4, 5 products. They all land in like tier 4, where you're barely making any revenue, right? Or zero revenue, or you have like a ROAS of like 0.3, and it's complete shit. And you think that it's because of the creative or because of the targeting or because your product page is bad, right? And you start working on the product page and you spend a month working on the product page, and then you start filming all those great creatives, right? But what you don't understand is that it might actually just be the product market fit, and what you just need to do is find a new product and try to really hit the tier 2, tier 1, right? And I think they're really important. I think there's this inflection point, right? There's this inflection point where just some products, they do exponentially better than others, right? If you find a tier 1 product, everything else will be easier. It'll be the one thing, if you do right, that honestly you can then have like really mediocre creatives, mediocre targeting, and a mediocre product page. You will outperform most other stores because you found that product that customers want, right? And they'll come and like find it from your website if it's good enough, right? And there's this exponential relationship, right? Now, how do I actually define the tier 1 product? I mean, look, I wrote this like almost half a year ago, but I think ROAS above 5 if you're running really paid ads with low variance. There's another slide. Actually, let me quickly jump into it because I think it's where is it? I made this point here on this slide where the variance in the ROAS, right? So like, let's say you're testing a new product and you're running Facebook ads, TikTok ads, whatever it might be, whatever paid channel it is, and we'll discuss organic separately. The worst day of a ROAS of that product still needs to be considerably above the break-even ROAS, right? Which, by the way, isn't even the store I showed you isn't the case, right? We have days where we're below break-even ROAS, which then gets overcompensated by the days where we're way above our break-even ROAS, right? So on average, we're slightly above our break-even ROAS on like an average month, but that's not a tier 1 product. I would say that's more of a tier 2 product for me. And I'm happy to kind of, tell you about the weaknesses of art stores, and again, really just the mistakes that we have made. But the point is that if you actually test a product and it's straight off the bat making 5 ROAS, and you're using and you're just like in the beginning and it's your first creatives and you haven't even optimized on all the other factors, that's a great first indication that this could be obviously amazing product market fit. And then high word of mouth. I don't want to go with like too kind of macro here, but I think what a tier 1 product is. Obviously, if it's so good that people talk about it, they tell their friends about it, there is a word of mouth kind of effect that happens very quickly, then that's obviously a great indication. And again, it should be, I think, one again very concrete thing is that it should be very difficult to copy. And again, that's also an obvious point in terms of like, if again, there's all kinds of like new products that come up that people in the e-commerce space and the Shopify space jump on, and it becomes saturated very quickly, right? And I think you need to find a product that doesn't get saturated, where those that you might be making abnormal profits in the beginning, but the more and more competitions come in, the narrower this abnormal profits becomes, until there's just this kind of until everyone essentially makes the market so saturated that only a few make a profit, and even they're really struggling because it's just so competitive, right? So try to really, again, tier 1 product is also one where you can sustain this competitive edge over time, and it's very difficult to copy from. And again, we'll go into some examples of that. Hey, before you bounce, consider subscribing to our channel, but only if you've actually enjoyed the video and found at least a few valuable things for your Shopify store. Also, check out our free Shopify app, Trackidex. We have a link in the description below. We're developing new features literally every day, and we're also excited to actually hear your feedback on some of the next features we should develop. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.